The Outwaters is the new found footage horror making waves because of its structure and descent into pure chaos. The film premiered at the New Jersey Film Festival in February of 2022. And finally, it got a cinema release in February of this year, 2023, followed by its digital release onto American streaming platform Screambox. The horror film has become a hot topic because much like found footage recent film Skinamarink, its experimental style has, again, divided audiences. You either get wrapped up in the madness and hypnotized by the descent, or it's completely lost on you. For some, atmosphere alone is enough. The thought, the feeling, and the tone of terror can transport you. But for others, the ambiguous nature of the film leaves a lot to be desired. The film starts with a blood-curdling phone call where a distressing collection of shrieks attempts to reach a 911 operator. And then, of course, we have the setup. The film is found footage of memory cards, and these have been edited together chronologically for internal review. I liked the touch of the SD cards because it allowed the film to be broken up into segments. Each card kind of had its own chapter, although ultimately the film is broken into two parts: before and after the madness. The story follows four people, two brothers, a singer, and a stylist, all friends who intend on making a music video in the Mojave Desert. The first half of the movie shows their thought process on planning the video, and this is in an effort to make it appear as authentic as possible, gathering footage. This film runs for 1 hour and 50 minutes, and the second half of this film is very different. It's a surrealist montage into gloom and despair with fantastical elements, blood, light shows, and more. One thing that this film utilizes really well is sound, but this can be seen in both a positive and negative light. Because of the isolated location and the setup being a music video, they lean into the natural surrounding sounds, whether that be overwhelming wind on a raw mic or the emotional song of the artist. And because they are purposefully recording both with semi-professional equipment, they are finally able to meet in the middle, with it being a full sensory experience, loud and jarring visually and audibly. And just like the visuals, they play with the audio as much as possible. I have not seen another found footage do this to this extent. They have shrieks and screams that are quickly transformed just with a few edits into something very off-putting and glitchy. And so for what you aren't able to see due to the camera movement, you're able to understand through its soundtrack. It's pretty straightforward, but it's also genius because not all found footage utilizes the sound. And the fact that it's a music video, it's the perfect setup for this. Although, if you want to get technical, there is a negative side to this, and it's more to do with the way they chose to edit this together. To make this more of a cohesive, and I use that term very loosely in this film, story, they tried to put some emotive energy into the start of the film, and this actually works against the laws of found footage. For a spoiler-free example, in the film you hear the song of the artist, which is cut together from different angles, which makes no sense given that this is meant to be raw material. How does the song sync up perfectly with these snippets from different clips? It's like they've already edited together these clips from different takes, but this is meant to be raw footage from a card. We see this on the other side in the second half of the film, but this is a really good spoiler-free example. I found this frustrating because it takes so long to get into the horror, and the whole point of the first half of this film is to make it as raw and real as possible, luring the audience into believing it's a genuine tape. And at the end of the day, that's what sets found footage apart. And I guess if you want to add to this, you can pull apart the whole theory of them filming so much before they get into the desert, or really while they're in the desert and before they start filming the music video, because they film so much before it goes awry, which is an odd choice considering that they're filming, again, the music video in the desert, camping, no power. Surely they would want to conserve battery and storage. They do address this quickly at one point, but I feel like considering the whole idea for the film, the narrative works against them because they're filming for an actual product, not for documentation, which we usually see in found footage films. It's like they couldn't choose. They almost committed fully to this being the footage of a man who's really into his tech stuff and filming a friend, but then also it's meant to be a professional music video, I guess done by friends, but somewhere it meets in the middle. because it starts almost having the same Mika look at found footage as Paranormal Activity, where he's obsessed with his camera. And you may be wondering why I'm holding on to these kinds of facts throughout this film. Is this really all I have to nitpick? Yes, it is, because this film from here takes a sudden turn. Once the magnetic down spiral takes charge, which links into the land and nature, we are left with an earth-shattering down spiral. It is a masterful sequence, I'll give them that, although an equal percentage of it is indistinguishable. The experimental nature of what is shot and how it's edited together is impressive, but once the sequence takes hold, it carries on for 50 minutes. And because it offers little to no clues, it's just an art piece to experience. The film does not have a strong arc or answers for its viewers, although there are a few moments throughout the film where clues are seen in the background. It's a startling atmosphere with unfortunately no heart or story. Some would call it a music video, others maybe a short story, which made sense to me after watching it why people were comparing this to Skinamarink, because although it's a completely different setting, it has the same core value. All atmosphere, ambiguous story. Experimental film is an art form itself, but to run close to 2 hours, surely it makes sense to leave the viewer with some kind of takeaway instead of overstimulating them and packing intense subject matter without conclusion into the film's final moments. And yes, no one warned me. I did not know how this film was going to end, or the final moments. I should say maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, because it is a lot. And you know what? I'm not going to warn you either. I'm not going to tell you what the subject matter is. That's for you to figure out. It's like going through IKEA and getting the hot dog at the end. I enjoyed this film for its atmosphere, but I can't help but think if there were minor changes, 1 or 2 more clues, or 20 minutes shorter, and just an idea of an arc, this could have been a really great film. Instead, it remains an experience, not so much a full story. The visuals were there, but the storyline remains somewhere lost in the desert. The film was written, directed, and starred Robbie Banfitch. This being his first feature with 2 more features in the pipeline, I would love to see some arcs incorporated into his feature-length films to come, because everything else we had in this film was magic. I have not seen a found footage edited together like this with some really creative visuals, and matched with the audio, it just had so much, but then left so much out. And for such a long runtime, I was really let down by that. I'm still gonna give the film a personal score of 6 out of 10, because I really do like experimental and especially surrealism within horror movies, but please keep in mind that this is 100% an experimental film, and if films like Skinamarink aren't your cup of tea, this one might not be either. Although I would say this one is a little bit more involved, a little bit more graphic, and a little bit more full on than that film. I do think it's worth a watch at least once, and I think it's really interesting what people are doing with horror, but if we could get a little bit of a storyline in there, I just think it would go so much further. Originality, I'm gonna have to give it a 7 out of 10, just for the visuals and audio display. And for scare, I am gonna give it a 6 because of the final scenes. I'll leave that one up to you, but just be warned, this is a horror movie. I've had so many questions about this film, so thank you so much for being patient. This is kind of a test to see if you guys are okay with receiving reviews coming out a little bit late, because of where I live in the world, I don't always have access. So if you got to see this in the cinema, congratulations. Let me know what that was like. I'd love to hear. And let me know what you thought about this film down below in the comments. I'd love to hear your personal score. What did you think? Did it work for you? Are you okay with this kind of experimental horror? I'd love to hear all of your opinions. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you here. I do videos every single week talking about horror movies, talking about thrillers, giving you a lot of recommendations, and just keeping the dialogue open. And I'll talk to you all very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky, and stay out of the Outwaters. Bye, friends.